I was working at a warehouse when my wife was diagnosed. You're working 10 hours at a warehouse. You're discouraged from interacting with other people, and it's a very lonely living. These warehouses are massive. I was moving throughout the whole warehouse, and it was empty. It's like I wouldn't see anybody down the aisles. You know, that was kind of the, I'm kidding. But that was kind of like, again, I was working there and I was like crying. Like, I'm walking through these aisles like crying because I don't know what the future looks like. I'm very uncertain in what the future looks like. How far are we gonna let this go? We have to put a stop to this at some point.
There's two different types of oleander. That one, there's a bushel. They grow into like a tree.
Oh, yeah.
Here, let me get this edge. I want to pull some of this dirt over here.
I grew out of asthma around 15.
Is that?
I kind of hit the ground running as a teenager. Once I kind of like understood that I got my lungs.
Yeah, so anyway.
I have a hard time accepting that my dad he's going through the same thing that I experienced.
He thought that they were gonna probably grow that way.
His doctor actually told him that like the environment that we're in is actually actively contributing to the decline in his ability to breathe.
Well, I moved here in 1970. In 1970, San Bernardino was still regular community. I've seen it now, we're here in 21, and we got trillions of trucks taking over our streets, tearing up our roads. Little by little, before you know, if your eyes are closed, and next thing you know, wow, look at that big warehouse. Why are they building right here, not even 2 miles away, to have a monster warehouse? And that's where people live. They ain't gonna go any higher. That's good. Still on our mind, we could move, you know, and it might help me. It just, you know, we just have to make a choice, you know. If it gets worse, we might, you know, we might sell out and move somewhere else and try it out.
It's a big move because we've been here for so long and all of our family is here and there's so much roots here.
We believe the only way we're gonna get out of this air quality crisis is if we shift to zero emissions, particularly in the freight industry, as soon as possible. The South Coast Air Quality Management District is the agency that's responsible for making sure we breathe clean air in the region. And so for years, we have been pushing that agency to adopt what's called an indirect source rule, or a rule to require warehouses to implement clean technologies to clean up their operations.
I'm also reminded that I represent Wilmington, the Wilmington community. You have a lot of these warehouses in a Wilmington community, a disadvantaged, impacted community.
And all those trucks, not just the plastics that come here, heavy duty.
So what's going on?
Councilman Burr, are you ready to testify?
I am ready. As an elected official, I hear you. This is a pipeline. You make it happen here. With this bold move, I make the rest happen in my city. And then today I'm accompanied by tons of environmental justice advocates, organizers, especially who have been putting in the groundwork in support of an indirect sources rule. So basically that is any kind of logistic development, warehousing that is over 100,000 square feet would be responsible for their carbon footprint and just their diesel emissions, everything to and from the warehouses, as opposed to prior where there has been none. But the reality is that without this rule being implemented, nothing is going to change. The logistics industry will continue to rule the region and nothing will ever get better when it comes to our health. It doesn't matter how much the economic benefits are if no one's around to spend it. The indirect sources rule, if that passes today, it would be the first type of legislation, policy, that is actually enforceable. Today they're voting on that finally.
Those trucks are still going to be on our freeways and they're still going to be spewing diesel because nothing in this rule gets rid of diesel trucks. They'll be replaced here by other warehouses.
I don't think she understands what the indirect source rule means because she's. Oh my gosh.
That's why I'll be voting against it. I appreciate my colleagues.
Okay, so she retired. She used to be the YLAG chair.
We just have to connect the dots and let's start to dig into the employment practices. Let's start to talk about the wages. Let's start to talk about the temporary employment. Let's start to explore what's really happening in our city and the narrative versus the truth. But just the attempts to get logistics to be responsible for their footprint and what they do to our communities, 6+ years.
With that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Here we go. Supervisor Fuel.
Aye. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem McCallum.
Roll.
Oh, Vanessa Delgado said yes. So the board actually just passed the indirect source rule. That just means that, all the work that we've done so far was heard and was appreciated. And now, we can go on to the next step, which is trying to make sure that it's regulated in a way that's safe for everybody. This is where, I built my life pretty much. And I feel like this is why I fight so hard for my community, because this is my home.
So if we all are able to come together and to realize the impact that we can all do by coming together, I think we can really make a difference on how this story continues to unfold.
Regulators are slowly stepping up and saying the community is important. The economy, industry, manufacturing, that is important to us, but so is the health and vitality of our community. Health, for too many years, was not even at the table in these discussions, and now it is.
I was working at a warehouse when my wife was diagnosed. You're working 10 hours at a warehouse. You're discouraged from interacting with other people, and it's a very lonely living. These warehouses are massive. I was moving throughout the whole warehouse. I was working at a warehouse. It's like my wife was diagnosed. I wouldn't see anybody down the aisles. You're working 10 hours at a warehouse. That was kind of the you're discouraged from interacting with other people. I was working there and I was crying. And it's a very lonely living. I'm walking through these aisles crying. These warehouses are massive. What the future looks like. I'm very uncertain. I was working at a warehouse. It's like my wife was diagnosed. I wouldn't see anybody down the aisle. We have to put a stop to this at some point.
There's two different types of oleander. That one, there's a bushel. They grow into like a tree.
Oh, yeah.
Here, let me get this edge. I want to pull some of this dirt over here.
I grew out of asthma around 15.
His dad.
I kind of hit the ground running as a teenager. Once I kind of like understood that I got my lungs.
Yeah, so anyway.
I have a hard time accepting that my dad he's going through the same thing that I experienced.
He thought that they were gonna probably grow that way.
His doctor actually told him that like the environment that we're in is actually actively contributing to the decline in his ability to breathe.
Well, I moved here in 1970. In 1970, San Bernardino was still regular community. I've seen it now. We're here in 21, and we got trillions of trucks taking over our streets, tearing up our roads. Little by little, before you know, if your eyes are closed, and next thing you know, wow, look at that big warehouse. Why are they building right here, not even 2 miles away? They have a monster warehouse. And that's where people live. They ain't gonna go any higher. That's good. Still on our mind we could move, you know, and it might help me. It just, you know, we just have to make a choice, you know. If it gets worse, we might, you know, we might sell out and move somewhere else and try it out.
It's a big move because we've been here for so long, and all of our family is here, and there's so much roots here.
We believe the only way we're going to get out of this air quality crisis is if we shift to zero emissions, particularly in the freight industry, as soon as possible. The South Coast Air Quality Management District is the agency that's responsible for making sure we breathe clean air in the region. And so for years, we have been pushing that agency to adopt what's called an indirect source rule, or a rule to require warehouses to implement clean technologies to clean up their operations.
I'm also reminded that I represent Wilmington, the Wilmington community. You have a lot of these warehouses in a Wilmington community, a disadvantaged, impacted community.
And all those trucks, not just the plastics that come here, heavy duty.
So what's going on?
Councilmember, are you ready to testify?
I am ready. As an elected official, I hear you. This is a pipeline. You make it happen here. With this bold move, I make the rest happen in my city. And then today I'm accompanied by tons of environmental justice advocates, organizers, especially who have been putting in the groundwork in support of an indirect sources rule. So basically that is any kind of logistic development, warehousing that is over 100,000 square feet would be responsible for their carbon footprint and just their diesel emissions, everything to and from the warehouses, as opposed to prior where there has been none. But the reality is that without this rule being implemented, nothing is going to change. The logistics industry will continue to rule the region, and nothing will ever get better when it comes to our health. It doesn't matter how much the economic benefits are if no one's around to spend it. The indirect sources rule, if that passes today, it would be the first type of legislation, policy, that is actually enforceable. Today they're voting on that finally.
Those trucks are still going to be on our freeways, and they're still going to be spewing diesel because nothing in this rule rid of diesel trucks. They'll be replaced here by other warehouses.
I don't think she understands what the indirect source rule means because she's. Oh my gosh.
That's why I'll be voting against it. And I appreciate my colleagues.
So she retired. She used to be the white chair.
We just have to connect the dots, and let's start to dig into the employment practices. Let's start to talk about the wages. Let's start to talk about the temporary employment. Let's start to explore what's really happening in our city and the narrative versus the truth. But just the attempts to get logistics to be responsible for their footprint and what they do to our communities, 6+ years.
With that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Here we go, Supervisor Fuel.
Aye. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem McCallum.
Roll.
Oh, Vanessa Delgado said yes. So the board actually just passed the indirect source rule. That just means that, you know, all the work that we've done so far was heard and was appreciated. And now, you know, we can go on to the next step, which is trying to make sure that it's regulated in a way that's safe for everybody. This is where, you know, I built my life pretty much. And I feel like this is why I fight so hard for my community, because this is my home.
So if we all are able to come together and to realize the impact that we can all do by coming together, I think we can really make a difference on how this story continues to unfold.
Regulators are slowly stepping up and saying the community is important. The economy, industry, manufacturing, that is important to us, but so is the health and vitality of our community. Health, for too many years, was not even at the table in these discussions, and now it is. Regulators are slowly stepping up and saying the community is important. The economy, industry, manufacturing, that is important to us, but so is the health and vitality of our community.
So thank you, folks, for joining us this evening. Our Clean Air Begins with Clean Transportation webinar series on Zoom. And I just wanted to thanks everyone for joining us. This is a series for the spring and summer, working towards the ISR Indirect Source Rule campaign at both the rail and the ports. And so Sierra Club has been a participant of this campaign for the last 8 to 10 years. And of course, longer when it comes to conservation efforts and when it comes to fighting against our polluted and poisoned air in the region and throughout the Los Angeles basin. And just to explain a little bit about the nation's oldest environmental organization, um, we have our leadership has put together our organizational priorities founded on some really core principles. And here are the organizational priorities that we have for the next several years into 2030, with transforming our energy system, ensuring outdoors for all, acting for justice, and protecting our ecosystem, which includes our 30%, protecting 30% of our natural ecosystems by the year 2030. And of course, the state of California and the federal government have set these goals as well. And so that is from which Sierra Club is our work is informed on that, in addition to our conservation efforts throughout this last century. Additionally, Acting for Justice talks about this in particular: air quality, water quality, and clean, as well as affordable affordable clean energy, as well as supporting family sustaining jobs that help ensure economic and social justice, as well as addressing the inequities in our response to the climate crisis, whether it be heat waves or cold spells or rolling blackouts for energy, to be left behind are definitely not left behind, and that we transition to a clean energy economy that ensures affordability to folks, access to folks, so that again, there isn't disproportionate suffering as there has been in so many of our communities. And so, going back to our webinar series, that is part of why we got this started. And part of what the Clean Transportation for All campaign across the country is working towards. And here locally, it is about ending deadly transportation pollution and addressing the climate crisis. So for us, as it was said in the video, zero emission solutions for medium and heavy duty trucks and buses, as well as equipment at warehouses, rail yards, and ports. And of course, additionally, switching to a sustainable ecosystem and regenerative land use for active mobility options like a robust public transportation, which might include regional rail and transit to trails, ensuring outdoors for all. And so that is what brings us here tonight, and a few quick pieces, and we will put this in the video description on YouTube as well as in our chat, the links to some of these links that we're sharing tonight, and like additionally the AQMD calendar, so you can uh, folks can click on this link and then subscribe to the calendar, and you can see transportation events that are related. So, like for June, we have a ton of info, including some specific like rail days, um, and and so yeah, so you can subscribe to that and you don't miss out. We'll be framing a lot of our work based on this, like including in September, a week without a car, week without a vehicle, and day a week of action. So yeah, so stay tuned with that. We also subscribe to our CARB and AQMD calendar, and you can and keep that updated on all relevant hearings, workshops, and meetings. And so there's another possibility to subscribe to that. Folks are welcome, and we'll explain who CARB are and who South Coast AQMD are throughout the presentation tonight. But those are ways that you can plug in. And so now let's go back to our Transportation for All campaign, clean transportation for all. And this is based upon our theory of change that recognizes that we need to stop air pollution from large transportation sources. And we can do this through regulation, through public health solutions, and we can focus the emission reductions at trucks and buses and cargo equipment, locomotives, rail, because we know that transportation pollution is the largest cause of GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, and air pollutants in our region. And our base building centers communities of color, communities um, like the Inland Empire, like the Wilmington area, like the Long Beach area, that have experienced the impacts of these pollution sources, and especially engaging our youth. Members, students in high school, middle school, but also, of course, in college, and our graduate students who are perhaps dedicating their studies and their future career on helping to address some of the health impacts, as well as um, really bring forward the technology advances that can get us to zero emissions on all of these traditionally very our region in particular, the Los Angeles basin, Southern California, has fail to clean is ozone, which naturally occurs, but also when it's at ground level is incredibly damaging to the human lungs. And so, with the rising temperatures, 7 of the 8 past years have been the warmest on record, and some of the warmest years coincided with some of the driest years leading up to like exacerbated drought conditions. And so we've had monumentally bad number of air quality days, which gives us the smoggy skies, as well as the damage in our respiratory system, which creates illnesses like asthma, cardiovascular disease, and we'll talk about this in just right next slide. The American Lung Association equates ozone pollution, breathing that in, as a sunburn on our lungs. And of course, the San Bernardino, Riverside, Los Angeles basin are the counties with the highest ozone pollution in the entire country, with almost half of the year in San Bernardino County, over 175 days, where we are experiencing incredible federal ozone, that days that exceed the federal ozone standard. And so um, this is why we must clean up this air, which why we must fight back using all of the tools that we can. And what we have shared before with folks is, and it's some of the results of years of fighting, is our Cal Enviro screen, where now we are tracking and the with this environmental screen, we can see the areas that are most damaged from the pollution. And so ozone, we talked about a little bit. Again, the main sources of ozone are from trucks, cars, planes, trains, factories, farms, construction, even dry cleaners, and then mixed with the other pollutants and the heat, it tends to stay heavy within our breathing area, irritating our lungs, causing inflammation, making chronic illnesses worse, even at very low levels of exposure. Ozone levels are highest in the afternoon and on hot days. And of course, making sure that during the times of days where it is most severe, that folks protect themselves, especially if you're outdoors or you work and play outdoors, to protect yourself. This Calenviro screen was part of really some hard fought efforts to really demonstrate that, this is not an imaginary a villain. This is a real impact that communities are facing. And so it covers a number of pollutants, including the next one, particulate matter, PM 2.5. It's a small airborne particle pollution. It's less than 2.5 micrometers, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. Um, and it includes a mixture of organic chemicals, dust, soot, and even metals. But these particles come from cars and trucks, factories, wood burning, and other activities. And they also travel deep into the lungs because they're so small, and can go anywhere that blood goes, which is every organ. And so it can cause real serious health problems, including heart and lung disease. And of course, children, elderly, people suffering from heart or lung disease, asthma, or chronic illnesses are most sensitive to the effects. And again, we can see that starting from the port area and then going inland, our community here in the Inland Empire region, but in this entire basin, is impacted by PM 2.5. And then the next one is just the next pollutant is just diesel particulate matter. So this comes straight from the trucks and the buses and the trains and the ships, that other equipment that have diesel engines, and it contains a mixture of gases as well as solid particles made up of hundreds of chemicals. The highest levels of PM, particulate matter, diesel particulate matter, are near ports, rail yards, and freeways. You can see the particularly dark and dense areas of where the these diesel emissions are being experienced by community from the freeways, from the interstates, from those travel modes, but also directly in at the ports, and then to like our dry ports, like in San Bernardino and in La Puente, Wilmington area. Like we can see all of those really heavily impacted area. And again, children and the elderly are most susceptible. Um, and particulate matter can reach deep into the lung, where it can cause eye, throat, and nose irritation, as well as heart and lung disease and lung cancer. And this is one of the areas where a lot of folks might feel, oh, my allergies are acting up, or oh, this. And so it's these particular pollutants like PM 2.5, like diesel particulate matter, like ozone, that could actually be causing rhinitis, stuffiness, headaches, nasal congestion, because your body is responding and trying to protect you from these very small pollutants that are harmful. And so, as we move forward with understanding this is the region that we live in, this is where we are living and breathing, and this is obviously where there are um, economic activities that are happening that influence and impact our air. And so in California, again, the transportation sector contributes to approximately 50% of total greenhouse gas emissions, nearly 80% of nitrogen oxide pollution, which is the precursor to smog. That's also known as NOx, and 90% of diesel particulate matter, that pollution, that PM pollution. And heavy duty trucks comprise only 10% of vehicles. They generate more than 25% of global warming emissions. And this was just a picture of a truck that didn't even have a load, but about every 30 seconds would emit this huge plume of black soot out into the air. And so while transportation includes consumer vehicles, what we're really focusing on is those heavy duty trucks, those heavy duty equipment, that heavy duty equipment that contributes to more than 25% of our global warming emissions, 45% of the NOx emissions, and nearly 60% of the direct particulate matter pollution, which again is so harmful to community members and to our health. So, if we talk about ending deadly transportation pollution and addressing the climate crisis, again, our solution is focused towards zero emission solutions on those medium and heavy duty trucks and buses and all of the vehicles and equipment at warehouses and rail yards and ports, these heavy duty machinery that really just operates and many times with impunity, like with no air filters or restrictions. And so I scrolled through this really quickly, but I want to go back real quick. This was last year after a storm where, again, our unique geography, right? We live in a valley. And so our unique geography sort of plants the pollution in here. And but when we have storms and very particularly windy days, all of that sort of gets blown out. We had a storm drop a tremendous amount of snow on our mountains, as you can see. But then just a short 24 hours later, the day's operations and the from the ports all the way down to the rail yards coming through here, rail lines, as well as our diesel trucks out in the community and on the freeways, um, very quickly refills our basin with this polluted air that we are breathing. And so, what that takes us to is how do we fight back? And this isn't anything new to folks. And many folks from the 60s and 70s and 80s will tell you, well, it looks better than it's ever before. We could never even. But that doesn't mean that we can't keep fighting for better, especially as we know and are learning that this um, really small pollution is entering our bloodstream and hitting into our neurological systems and hitting into our cardiovascular systems, and so just causing extreme damage that we are going to be paying for the long time. So that is why we have to fight for clean air solutions. And for Sierra Club and our Clean Transportation for All campaign, it means working in coalitions with other groups and organizations, including local ones like the San Bernardino Airport Communities Coalition, as well as the Impact Project, which has folks from the East Yards area and Long Beach community, as well as folks from the Wilmington area. And so it is in these clean air coalitions that we have been able to um, get the political pressure to move forward. Some of the goals are that, the LA Metro, so our Los Angeles Electric Truck and Bus Coalition, which does consist of some labor folks as well at Jobs to Move America, as well as IBEW, as well as Earth Justice and Sierra Club, you know, uh, really asking LA Metro to move to 100% zero emission buses by, a deadline, as well as LA School District moving their school bus fleet to 100% electric, and as well as looking at the different refuse um, municipalities throughout the region, like in Long Beach or Pasadena, and as well as that, what can we do out here in the Inland Empire as well to make sure that those refuse trucks that are out collecting garbage every week and driving through our community are as clean as they can be, as they should be, and then also working at the ports of LA and Long Beach to help clean up their air. So tons of work, and it doesn't happen um, on its own, because it's an example of where community has to rise up and has to fight back. And so this is where these groups and coalitions have um, taken their call to action and really moved folks into working together and making sure that um, we don't give up. We don't stop the fight, and we keep on going. So here is one of the actions that we did recently at the LA City Hall, where we called out with our coalition partners at Pacific Environment and the Long Beach um, Community Coalition, CCAEJ, our community partners out here in the Inland Valley, as well as there is a group called CFOS, which they have like the keeping up with the technology and letting us know that zero emission technology is available. And we did a die-in at LA City Hall where folks died for 6 minutes. 6 minutes, 6 minutes to represent the 6 years left that Mayor Bass promised to clean up the ports and pollution, rail pollution, um, for the community, for community members who have been suffering and dying from these operations, that she would have them cleaned up, let us know that she was on the community side. So we did a really great action that day, got some media attention, as well as within our coalition, we also put up some billboards and bus stop advertising in Washington, D.C., as we were also lobbying and asking the EPA to approve our California's waiver for the commercial harbor craft, so that we could fight for our community. And why do we do this, right? Well, one of the things that we talked about was that public health impact. And the American Lung Association put a dollar sign to that. If we were to transition to zero emission transportation and electricity, we would greatly reduce pollutants health today, that harm our health today and threaten our healthier future. And so the estimate is 1.2 trillion in public health benefits. And what does that mean? Those benefits mean lost days of school, of work, of actual the costs of hospital stays and emergency room visits and medication and long-term care when folks when their illnesses turn into chronic conditions because of the continued pollution. And so the ways that we can stop this, the ways that we can create this benefit, these benefits of trillions of dollars, as well as the lives and quality of life enriched, is putting those regulations on corporations to clean up their fleets and operations, as well as regulation on our trains and locomotives for zero emission technology, and then also working on communities and in communities for high road job training and the placement of zero emission technology in our communities, in our workplaces, like zero emission forklifts and drayage vehicles. And those are the vehicles that move stuff along, either the heavy duty diesel containers or the yard vehicles that move around uh, some of the merchandise or the freight merchandise before it gets to its final loading spot, either on the back of a truck or on a rail car. And so those solutions are possible. The technology is there, and we are demanding that this happen for so many reasons, um, including the fact that these environments that we are living in are already suffering from what we know are the cumulative impacts, the one thing after another, after another, after another, like power plants and highways and rail yards and those inland ports, as the dry ports, as well as the port operations in Long Beach and Los Angeles, the factories and agriculture that are in our communities. And we've had some wins, right? This is really great. Our AQMD, we talked about, I'd tell you who they were. The South Coast Air Quality Management District has incorporated in their air quality management plan, which you'll hear called the AQMP. They have advocated for zero emission as necessary to achieve attainment, and not near zero or natural gas away from diesel, but really zero emission technology. And our AQMP also validated the indirect source rulemaking that we did with warehouses, which you might have seen at the beginning of this webinar, the clip from PBS where they talked about the warehouse ISR, indirect source rule, also validated that we can use this to address pollution at other facilities similar to warehouses that are magnets for pollution, like those rail yards, like our ocean going vessels at the ports, as well as the port operations themselves. And so this has been a win. It wasn't where they wanted to go, where they started, but we have won. And there's that direct indirect source rule that was in the video that mandates zero emission and clean energy on warehouses. This is some of the other places where we're looking at, right? To address this, knowing that the AQMP recognizes and validates the ISR rulemaking process and rulemaking authority of the South Coast Air Quality Management District to oversee and push these facilities. And so now we are in the mix of fighting for the rail yard and intermodal facilities, the rail yard operations, as well as the ports operation. So those are the two next steps on our ISR campaign, is where AQMD staff is going. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about in just a minute as we go into some of the new win or the big wins at CARB, which is our California Air Resources Board. And this is a Southern California partnership with um, but California obviously covers the whole state, but also partnering with the AQMD to to push again ways to cut emissions, including our NOx regulation, an at birth rule, our hovercraft rule, our advanced clean fleet rule, and our locomotive rule. And so in partnership or in collaboration with CARB, also taking this to the EPA so that we can get the waivers and grants that we need so that our air can finally reach, you know, our clean air goals and start being a healthy community for everyone who lives here. And the real impact of all of this wins so far is to really demonstrate the fact that organizing works. When we organize, we win. And what does organizing really mean? It means community members like you, it means community members like myself and others who come together, learn about this information, learn about what is impacting our lives and how we can fight back. So let's talk about how we can fight back, right? Because we have to plan for the future. And there are tons of ways that people have done direct action. Let's do a lobby, let's do some op-eds, like write some letters to the paper. Let's But the real key about organizing for a specific goal, like our clean air and our clean transportation for all campaign, is really understanding who are our targets. Who are we trying to reach? Who are our priorities in terms of who do we have to talk to first, and where do we put our limited time, as many of us are volunteers out in the community, right? Are have full-time jobs, have full-time family obligations, have full-time school obligations perhaps. And so how do we be really focused on where we turn our attention? And so even deeper about the South Coast Air Quality Management District. It's the regulatory agency responsible for improving air quality for large areas of Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, and including the Coachella Valley. It's both a research and regulatory agency. They're the lead agency for public health improvement on air quality, and we're targeting them for that transportation electrification. Our air basin has about 17 million people, which represents almost half the population of the entire state of California. And there are over 28,000 businesses operating under the South Coast AQMD, which they permit, um, which means that they oversee and permit because their operations impact air. And so there's some estimates here. We have over 6,000 warehouses, 2 ports, 25 rail yards, 10 airports, and there is a 13 board member that approve the laws that the AQMD staff bring forward and that community also are participating in. And of course, business interests perhaps fighting against. And so, the AQMD meetings are super exciting and fun. It's where very dry rulemaking happens, but it's a crowd. They always show up. I'm just kidding. That's a B-52's concert. So yeah, a lot of times our AQMD meetings are incredibly empty. The chamber is very, a couple of folks at the dais, some of them calling in, and then staff members and maybe a few handful of community members. But the truth is, while it is not super exciting, uh, they are responsible for the air that 17 million breathers across the region um, are facing. And so we know that we've seen a rapid growth of pollution from logistics, which means then the heavy duty transportation not only harms our public health, but the climate as well. And we have to sort of rally against the lackluster participation at the AQMD, understanding that they play an important role. And so um, the success of the warehouse ISR, as well as the pressure, community pressure on AQMD staff and board to move forward on the rail and ports ISR, is about community participation. So we've talked about the ISR, the indirect source rule, but what does it really mean? And it means that these rules can help reduce the harmful pollutants like the NOx, the nitrogen oxides, the particulate matter, from the operations that are typically magnets for the pollution, right? So ports, trucks are coming in and out, rail cars are coming in and out, leaving locomotives leaving from the ports directly. So they're a magnet for vehicles and operations that traditionally are very polluting. Same thing as warehouses. Same, especially airports as well, right? They have moved the cargo moving equipment as well as the equipment that moves the planes, but then planes are flying on diesel, right? On diesel fuel. And so, or some mix of that. And so, very polluting. Rail yards as well. The intermodal rail yards that trans uh, that switch out heavy duty rail cars to other to moving different tracks and breaking up the different not only the locomotive engines, but as well as the cargo handling rail cars moving back and forth, going through communities. Rail yards are completely, heavy duty industrial and running on older technology that includes diesel generators and locomotive engines that are just really, really heavy duty emissions. And then, of course, also new and redeveloped areas where tons of chemicals and pollution, air pollutants are released that contribute as construction happens, trucks coming in and out, hauling dirt out, hauling dirt in, hauling equipment in and out. So those areas also a huge magnet for disruption and pollution to the surrounding communities. So an indirect source rule says we get to manage that. We get to say how you can give you some guidelines, give industry and business some guidelines on how they can clean up their act. And it goes as part of the puzzle. These other things that we have fought for, including higher truck standards at the EPA, the at birth rules that I mentioned earlier, um, and then our ports and rail ISR. And so our cargo ships and freight congest the airways in unmanageable waves that affect residents year round. And so we're talking about doing strong indirect source rules of pollution, ruling that environmental justice communities would be able to breathe at ease as their roads and airways are, given a big sigh of relief because we're moving to those zero emission uh, equipment and vehicles. In addition, we feel and we know those green jobs will grow as the zero emission technology expands, as clean energy is that space, as well as clean air, um, really just starting to be the way of life in our community. And so we feel, and our target at this point is the AQMD, the Air Quality Management District, that we need them to adopt that rail and port ISR this year before January 2025, because we know that that will save lives. And so I'm going to skip past this next slide and go over to um, just a quick discussion on who the AQMD board is, um, as well as some criticism that they have faced these last few months. So the AQMD board is made up of, most of them are elected officials from other places. So the cities in Los Angeles County have 2 seats on the board. They have an East region and a West region. And so council members from those specific regions, I believe it's the mayor now, maybe, I don't know. They all get together and say, okay, you so and so are gonna you're going to represent the cities in LA County on the west side. And so they have those appointees. In San Bernardino and Riverside County, the League of Cities both help select the members of the board from the cities in respectively in San Bernardino County and in Riverside County. Additionally, the county boards of supervisors um, in all of the counties also have a seat, and they again select one of their members to serve as the AQMD board member. So we have an LA County Board of Supervisors appointee or a board member, an LA County, so a San Bernardino County, a Riverside County, and an Orange County supervisor on the board. Additionally, the legislature appoints, there's a Senate appointee and an assembly appointee, and then the governor also appoints someone. And so someone from the Senate, someone from the assembly, and someone from the governor's office also appoints. So altogether, there are 13 board members. So which means that we need 7 votes to win any additional rules, regulations. We need them to be on our side. And then just recently, I was going to talk about what happened in May. The board held a retreat. They do have an annual retreat where staff puts together programs and presentations for the whole board to take a look. These are public meetings, but a lot of times they are kind of inaccessible to community. And so the LA Times issued a pretty scathing opinion piece saying that they went on vacation to a desert resort instead of cutting port pollution and really acting using their authority to crack down on the biggest polluters. And so this was already like on the schedule, but it just worked out that the following month, June, just almost 2 weeks ago, um, there was some things on the board's agenda, on the board's like to-do list of what they could do. And so a couple of the areas were actually on the agenda that day of June 6th, including the emission boiler regulation, as well as setting the date for the rail yard ISR meeting, as well as, and so we had momentum on our side from not only the LA Times article and op-ed, but also the fact that we have been meeting with staff and community members and bringing folks together. So we had this huge rally for clean air. This was the first thing in the morning, but as the day went on, over 100 people ended up being there to share, to hold up signs, to really fight for clean air and represent community against some pretty large business interests. And on top of that, we had some media hits, and I will share these in the description as well so that you can see. A lot of it does talk about some of um, the large polluters, the boilers, some of those wins, which were huge and which folks had been fighting over commercial operations, like with those heavy duty water heaters and those heavy duty boilers that heat up space, that they all, that they all clean up their act. And so it was a very exciting day. It was uh, tons of that real, like, again, that real understanding of coalition partners, including the fact that that it was like over 14, 15 organizations who ended up being there in the space that day, and not everybody spoke. Some people were just part of the very important, right, clap and cheer crowd to really demonstrate community power. And so there was also have a win on the polluter rules and the boiler rule, and then have, without really incident or comment, to have the rail yard ISR, indirect source rule, put on the calendar for August 2nd, put that hearing in place. And so that's what we want to keep going with community involvement. And so the next steps here are some ways that we can take action moving forward, including two community-led ISR events, workshops to explain to you and other community members what's going on, what these rules mean, and how we need folks to fight back. And part of the impetus for why we even created these community led workshops was the fact that the AQMD had initially proposed 3 in person community meetings in San Bernardino, in Wilmington, and in the East LA area, and then decided to just do 2 virtual meetings, and not do the in-person meetings for community members. And so we thought that folks needed to learn about, hear about, and talk about, in a way that their voices would be heard, these ISR rules, and why it's so important that our community be protected by the AQMD and the board. And some of that might even take, inviting our local elected officials. So at San Bernardino, that's our Inland Empire event. We are looking to invite both the 2 mayors that sit on the board, the mayor of Riverside and the mayor of Highland, as well as the 2 supervisors who sit on the board, um, Supervisor Perez from Riverside and Supervisor Hagman from San Bernardino County. Invite them to this event in the community so that they can hear from those people who are impacted. And the same thing in the Wilmington, LA, Long Beach area, that is looking at that week of July 15th through the 20th. So just a couple of less than a month away. Same thing, inviting local elected officials to hear from the community so that they understand why we need this rail yard indirect source rule to pass this on August 2nd. And then we are doing also a youth event with our Girl Scouts, our local San Gorgonio chapter, and we'll see if we take it on the road for some of the other areas of of Los Angeles and Orange County Girl Scouts, but really giving them an opportunity to participate in policy making, talking to elected officials, get involved with what's going on and planning these meetings or staying up to date. You can visit the bit.ly here at the bottom of the screen, rail ISR action. So bit.ly, capital R, rail, capital ISR action. And so, yeah, this is where we're going to, our next steps, and bringing our voices and action to the AQMD, the Air Quality Management District. And then, of course, that leads us all into our building up information and knowledge for folks to be able to speak with authority, with real input, with real input to the AQMD on August 2nd. So there is the in-person virtual public hearing on August 2nd. So save the date, put that on your calendar. I will also drop the RSVP link into the description as well, so that folks can um, can RSVP so that we know what to expect. If we had 100 people come out for air, clean air in June, talking about really wonky stuff like boilers and polluter fees and putting things on a hearing, we need double, triple, quadruple the amount of people to come and speak out and really you have a united front against a billion-dollar industry that has fought regulation for 100 years, to really again speak and have the AQMD support the staff and demand that the board protect community and adopt that strong uh, rail ISR first, and then as we move on to the ports ISR. So August 2nd, put that on your calendar, and we'll talk more throughout those community workshops about what we're asking for. But we definitely want a facility-wide emission reduction target. We want to eliminate any unnecessary off ramps like um, you get an exception because you do this or because you did this or because like your business has slowed down or something. Like we want to make sure that there are reductions no matter and without exception. We also think because we're moving into zero emission technology, which does require power, we want to make sure that they are committed to broad scale facility wide transitions, including infrastructure commitments with the power companies, so that the work starts happening. Because if we wait for them to do it, it'll be another 20 years. And we need them to start taking action now. And then, of course, making sure that our voices, especially the environmental justice communities like the Inland Valley and like Wilmington and East LA and the ports communities that have been fighting pollution at so many levels for so many years, that we have a voice in making we have the information accessible to us so that decisions can be made about how to decrease emissions and clean up our air. So again, through our workshops, we will definitely explain more. Write down your questions, share with folks, share with your community members, share with your neighbors and friends and coworkers. We're all breathing the same air, and many of us are already experiencing the health impacts. And so, this is not a controversial thing. This is absolutely what people are experiencing. And so, and folks understand this, clean transportation for all does mean ending the deadly transportation that uh, transportation pollution is putting into our communities, as well as addressing the climate crisis because of those greenhouse gas emissions that not only need to stop, but that we need to really like reduce to zero as quickly as possible. And so, invite folks to join our Clean Transportation for All campaign, um, and understand that this rail ISR and this warehouse ISR is all building to some of the bigger fights, like we know are happening at the ports as well as at the airports, as well as at the construction sites where either redevelopment or new construction is happening. And so I just want to sort of let you all know that the ports ISR is also on the calendar for the end of this year. And so we will be building out towards that. Again, all part of the Clean Transportation for All campaign, working with our coalition partners. So if you're in some of those areas where our coalition members are, please reach out to them. But otherwise, you can always reach out to um, the Sierra Club and our Clean Transportation for All campaign. The easiest way to join the campaign is to visit this bit.ly, the bit.ly capital CTFA SoCal, all lowercase. The SoCal is lowercase, capital CTFA bit.ly, and sign up to join our campaign and stay updated. And then, of course, there's my contact info, including my phone number, 909-262-2880. I will drop that all also into the description for the video. And I want to really just finish off with a quote from Josh Fox, an environmental advocate and filmmaker who did the documentary Gasland and then helped fight and ban fracking across the country in different areas, just based on his own experience in New York. But he said that, and you know, if you think your voice doesn't matter, it really does matter, and our elected officials need to hear from us. And so, in this election year, we'll leave you with this thought: spend 95% of your time electing climate champions and 5% of your time changing your light bulbs. So we as individuals can do a lot. We can change a lot of light bulbs. We can transition our own vehicles to electric. We can make a commitment to use public transportation or to do as much active transportation as possible. But at the end of the day, we saw much of the pollution is from the actual commercial industrial sector, and we have to fight them and against their pollution, and we have to engage our local elected officials to fight for us as well. And so, if we can elect those climate champions, then we know that our work is 95% taken care of. We won't have to lobby so hard at places like AQMD and CARB. But until then, we have to elect folks that really understand what's at stake, what public health impacts people are facing, and really just be willing to help us all transition to a clean green economy that works for everyone. And so Josh Fox again, his finishing quote: "We need policy change, and the most important thing people can do for that policy change is to contribute and participate in the political process. We have to vote climate change deniers and people who would create subsidies for the fossil fuel industry out of office. And we have to protest when bad decisions are being made. And we have to rally together when the potential for good decisions and good policy is being implemented." So we hope to see you at the AQMD uh, meeting on August 2nd. The South Coast Air Quality Management District will be holding their public hearing on August 2nd, and we hope to see you there, as well as um, perhaps even sharing your own voice and testimony to the AQMD. And in the meantime, have you join us at those community workshops in this month and in July, and so that you feel prepared to really fight the good fight for clean air, for our health, for public health and safety, and for our community. So, thank you so much for again taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and watch this and participate. And we cannot wait direct indirect source rule for the rail yards this coming summer. Have a great evening. Then 5% taken care of. We won't have to lobby so hard at places like AQMD and but until then, we have to elect folks that what's at stake, what public health help us all transition to a clean. Josh Fox again, his fifth policy change, and the most important thing people is to contribute and participate. Have to vote climate change deniers and people who would subsidies for the fossil fuel industry out of office, and we have to bad decisions are being made, and we have to rally together when the potential for good decisions and good policy is. So we hope to see you at the AQM